Why, hello, welcome. I am Lady Genesis, and this is the Art Realm of Genesis. I am back with another fun-filled episode for MerMay. This time I'm revisiting the render paper and seeing how it holds up to the watercolors I used last week, so let's get started. First off, this mermaid is inspired by a leaf sheep. They are a type of sea slug and they are stinking adorable. And I'm gonna plop up some pictures for you so you can see how cute this thing is. Also, as a disclaimer, I know that the sketch is blurry. My brain's spaced. I totally forgot that I said in a few episodes back that if I was gonna sketch anything, I was gonna do it at an angle so that it didn't give off that blurry effect. My bad, y'all. That's on me. And so I have to keep in mind when I set up my camera that happens, and I apologize for that. This sketch took me roughly 14 minutes to complete, so not bad. Yeah, this mermaid is definitely a little more detailed than all my regular mermaids. I mean, I want to make sure she has tons of those sheep leaves on the back of her head and on her tail to sell the effect. Is not an exact replica of what it would look like, but this is just how I would envision it if she was, a mermaid. And then I also added those tiny leaves on her bust and on her hips just to add something extra. So this is how she looks all sketched out on the render paper. Not bad from the inspiration sketch versus the final sketch on the bigger piece. As you can tell, I did make a couple of small changes, but nothing too crazy. And now it's time for the watercolors. And if you did not watch last week's video, I said that I got these watercolors from Five Below for one of my kiddos. The watercolors worked so well in my tiny sketchbook that I couldn't wait to use it on the render paper. So of course, this painting is already done. So I do have some notes that I want to go over with you guys while I'm painting. First off, I had sketched pretty dark on the page. I don't think I did the last time I painted something in my pad. But while I was painting on those lines, it did kind of blur with the lighter green, and I had to be very careful with how much water I used around those pencil lines. Also, these paints are very unforgiving when it comes to water droppage. The first time I dropped water was on the face, and it gave off this grayish color on the page. And I'm not gonna lie, I low-key panicked and thought I had ruined the painting from the jump. But I just kind of sat back. I said, well, it is watercolors. Maybe if it dries, it won't look so bad, which it didn't to some degree. But those dry lines where, it edges the water droplet, I did have to go over those with more paint, which in turn made me use way more paint than I wanted to in some places. Yeah, drying time took a lot longer for each stage because I wanted to make sure everything was completely dry. Me and my patience were not working very well together. I literally had to step away for a while to let it dry, because every time I looked at it, I would just get anxious. As you could tell, look at the water droplets on the fin, or on her tail, I mean, and you see how it was just kind of hanging out, but with the time lapse, it kind of dries fast, but you could still see that little bit of lining around where the droplet was, also on the neck and chest area. Yeah, I can definitely tell that it took so long to dry, and then I had to go over it so many times with a darker color or shade to hopefully draw your attention away from those water stains. I would have to say that the only time that the water stains were working with me and instead of against me was when I was doing her leaf sheepy looking hair pieces and at the end of her tail. And as a random side note, does anybody agree with me when I say that these little pieces look like tiny cactuses on top of her head? I think they're just so cute. There's just something fundamentally adorable about the leaf sheep. And also, have you seen this other sea slug? I'll put the picture up, but it is super cute. It looks like a dust bunny. Oh, so here's another instance where the paint worked against me. Is when I was painting her eyes and outlining her face and her neck, and there you go, right there. And I didn't even realize that the black paint had dropped on her face until I had finished lining some stuff. I turned around and looked and went, oh my lord, what am I gonna do? First I had to blot up as much of that black paint as I could, and then I started going over that blemish at least a good 3 or 4 times with paint to kind of even it out. And I still think that that was the one thing that ruined her face. I mean, it's still cute, don't get me wrong, but I can tell that I messed up. I seriously believe that my favorite part was shadowing all the leaves, like all the little crevices. There's just something therapeutic about it for me, and peaceful, just going back in over and over and just, you know, making things pop out and then adding those extra highlights and details and shadows. And there I am, adding a little bit of blush to her face to kind of give it a little more life. At this point, I was a little afraid to go back in with the black paint, so I chose to use a paint marker instead to kind of give some of these pieces detail, like the little leaves on her bust and her hips, and then of course her face. I used a gel pen, but it wasn't working the way I wanted it to, so in the future I'm actually going to go back and add white paint, but you'll see that in a minute. But yeah, I think I used the paint marker mostly for the tiny leaves and the pink flowers all over her body, just to kind of help it stand out and pop. And here I am adding a little more shadowing to the problem spots, like the under the chin where the neck is, under her bust and in her arms, and trying to shadow more on the face to hopefully help out that spot where I made that mess. I mean, it's not too bad, but I guess it's, if Bob Ross says it's a happy accident, I might as well go with that. It was a happy accident. Oh yeah, I don't believe I mentioned this, but it took me roughly 3 days to complete, and the only reason it took that long is because of all the drying that I had to let it do, because the more I tried to paint over something that was wet, it just made it worse if I was trying to fix it. And it was like a couple hours here and there, so it wasn't like long spurts of painting. I think the longest day was actually the first day, and I got through most of it, and then I started adding the details in the second and third day. Right here I'm just filling in all the pink flowers after I had used paint marker to line them, just to make sure everything's filled out and looks nice. This is when I broke out the white acrylic paint to add the bubbles and the highlights and details on the face. I already knew that I wasn't going to get that white watercolor palette to stand out on this paper, and I already had too many mishaps to mess this up towards the end. And now she is all completed, and I say she turned out pretty good. Overall, I'm not mad with how it turned out with what I had to work with. The paper did hold everything. It did not bleed through, because that's how render paper works. That's what it's known for. It's to not bleed through the back. So it did hold up on that end. Maybe it was just the paint, because, you know, they are $5 Five Below watercolors. And maybe if I had more professional paint, it could have glided a little bit better. But overall, after it dried, the texture was killing me, and I did not like the water spots that I could not fix. And I'm pretty sure you can see them. I'm not going to point them out. They are there. So I'm going to give this, I don't know, 7 tail fins out of 10. Also, I should give her a name. I'm going to name her Cosette. It means little things, and you know, leaf sheeps are kind of little. I kind of wanted something to resemble her scientific name, which I'll put on the screen. Overall, I enjoyed painting Cosette, and I really hoped you liked this video too. If you did, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. All of it helps my tiny little channel grow, and I deeply appreciate all of you, so thank you so much. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to see my other works. Of course, it is 18+. but it is there if you'd like to see it. Next week, I am continuing the Mermaid series, so look out for another mermaid. But until then, I will see you when I see you. Love you all. Bye.